From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosabianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, you and I are always trying to improve ourselves, at least in theory, right? You know, improve the way we live, the way we eat, the way we learn. And you and I have become avid readers. And recently I came across this wonderful book called $1 Million Flip-Flops. And, you know, it was one of those books kind of piqued a little bit of curiosity, started scratching the surface. And then lo and behold, Rodric Lenhart, the author of $1 Million Flip-Flops, decided to join our podcast. So, Rodric, welcome to the Liquid Lunch. Please tell the audience, what was the brainchild of $1 Million Flip-Flops? And what is the takeaway that everyone can walk away with once they read this wonderful manuscript?
Yeah. First, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. It came from, I'm a lifelong entrepreneur, and I was fortunate to sell my last business and technically not have to do anything. I could just fiddle with the hot rods in the garage and build some furniture. And I always say, strap on my white Velcro New Balance and call it a life. And I did take about 6 months off, and we were chatting before the show started. You know, entrepreneurs never actually do that. The whole time I was brewing up, what am I going to do next, right? And I had some really dark times as an entrepreneur, and I know now that I've been a professional coach for as long as I have that I'm not alone. And the main driver behind this was so that other entrepreneurs know they're not alone, because it can be a very isolating and lonely place when you only have the space between your ears to run your business. So, and we can talk about the 5 phases of the entrepreneur, but I was on a beach in Thailand with Nicole, my partner, and I was doing some pleasure reading, which was Mike Kim's book, You Are the Brand, if you're familiar. And I look over at Nicole, I go, we got to give it all away. And she's like drinking a mango smoothie. She has no idea what's happening. And it was the birth of $1 Million Flip-Flops. It was the birth of our foundation, Send a Student Leader Abroad. It was the birth of this book. I wrote the whole book almost on that trip. I wrote it in January and February, and it was ready to go in June. But Amber Villauer, who did our book launch at NGNG, she moved it to September, which was rightly so. I learned a lot about launching a book. And anyway, that was it. I mean, the main point was that I had all of this stuff in my head and these systems that I had developed to ultimately, it's a decision filter. That's what the WAVES method is. That's what the book is about. It's building your why and your authenticity and your values and exploring those things and ultimately building a statement of purpose so that when a business deal or a chick or a hobby, it doesn't matter what the thing is, comes your way, you can run it through this filter that you've built on purpose for yourself. And it's an easy yes or no. That's what I wanted, because I had made the mistake, and we can talk about that too, but I made the mistake of just chasing money. And I call it right map, wrong mountain. You know, I was given the right map to quote unquote success, but it wasn't the mountain I was after. And when I got there, I said, you know, is this all there is? And that's what the book's about. That's what is designed to help other people avoid that pitfall if possible.
So flip-flops is obviously a play on words, right? There's a flip-flop you wear in your shoe, but there's also like that negative connotation of flip-flopping from one decision or one project or one job to the next. So kind of walk us through, what was the etymology? What did you mean to convey to the small business owner?
So the name came from that book. I was doing an exercise while I'm sitting in my beach chair, and it said, what in your immediate surrounding represents who you are? And it was flip-flops. I'm the guy who wears flip-flops 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I just gave a keynote in Austin with a suit coat and flip-flops. Like, that is who I am. That's how I'm going to show up to your meeting. I don't care who you are. If I'm working on the hot rods, flip-flops. If it's winter, flip-flops. You know, so this is just my thing, right? And so I looked down, I said, well, flip-flops represents who I am. And I'm like, well, what am I going to name this thing? And again, this is just all in my head. Nobody even knew that this was an idea yet. And I said, $1 million flip-flops. Yeah. Give or take, everybody wants $1 million. Give or take, everybody wants to be in flip-flops. It means they're relaxed somewhere. They're on vacation. They're whatever. But to your point, what it came to mean, and it was one of those, I don't believe in coincidences. We've taken two angles that coincide perfectly to mean happenstance. And I don't believe that that's how the world works. And what it came to mean was my superpower for my entire entrepreneurial career has been the ability to recognize that I need to change, but more importantly, take that step. And that's where a lot of people know they need to do a 180 in their business, in their life, and whatever they have going on, but they don't do it because they're not scared of the change. They're scared if it's right. They're scared if it's on purpose. They're scared of going down the same road again and being led down the same wrong path. And so those flip-flops change have led to the millions. So that's where it kind of came to mean two different things.
So Rodric, let's get to work. What are the 5 phases of entrepreneurship?
So it goes from believer to business Buddha. And you can nod your head or raise your hand if you've ever heard of any of these people, maybe in your own life. But the believer is, I've got this great idea. Everybody's going to want it. I just need to get more eyeballs on it. And I'm going to be a billionaire inside of 6 months and I can retire. That's uninformed optimism, right? Then you move to the showman. I've got the SUV. I've got the house. People do want my thing, but this is a lot harder than people told me it was going to be. I could take a vacation, but I really can't because the thing will fall apart. I'm working 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. Now I have informed pessimism. There's a lot, the guys in front of their Lamborghinis on Instagram left a lot out of this equation. Then ultimately, if your business is successful, you move into what I call the anxious philosopher. And this is my hero product, if you want to call it that. But I work with folks on a 6-week roadmap that turns that ship around if and when they find themselves in this phase. And I like to say you need the first 2 in order to start anything. You want the last 2, which we'll talk about. But most people get stuck in anxious philosopher and start the entire thing over again for the rest of their life. Sometimes forever. They never figure it out. And the anxious philosopher is, I have all the signs of Western success. I have everything people told me I would want, but I wake up every day with that sinking, is this all there is feeling? And I don't know who to ask. If I did know, I wouldn't know what to ask them. I'm isolated. I'm alone. People don't want to hear about my first world problems, how I'm making 300 grand a year and I'm sad. Nobody wants to hear it. So who do I talk to? But it's a very real reality for me at this stage. Have you ever seen or heard of any of these types of people so far?
I know 2.
So that's ultimately what the 6-week roadmap does. And it does it through the waves method, which we can talk about. That's what the book, the journal, everything I do revolves around that waves method. But when you move into Peaceful Warrior, that is where you've taken the deep dive into yourself and said, why am I doing any of this? Why do I want the money? Why? People just do things because that's what they're supposed to do. They never stop and ask themselves, why am I doing any of this at all? And when I get there, what next? Why? Right? So you're starting to make decisions from a more informed place as the Peaceful Warrior. And then ultimately you move into Business Buddha and you can infer what Business Buddha is. And I've got a free quiz. It's on my website. Go to milliondollarflipflops.com/quiz. And there it is. You can take it and it runs you through it's like 3 minutes to do the questions, but it will identify where you are on this journey. And you don't even have to opt in to get the result. I'm that kind of guy. And then there's a bunch of free resources. There's my recommended reading. There's videos. There's links. There's an explanation of what to expect next. We just released the quiz last week. So the feedback has been phenomenal. So I'm jazzed about it. So those are the 5 phases. And ultimately we work with folks to make sure that they don't repeat that cycle again and again and again and chase the next shiny object thinking it's going to be different.
Rodric, do you find that those phases follow chronologically, or can a person go from the optimist to the Buddha because he could be like an overnight success? Or do you feel that there has to be that very systematic succession?
I think two answers come to mind when you ask that question. I typically don't work with people who are in believer or showman. And I say that I only work with 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs, profitable entrepreneurs. You make 8 figures and still be poor. Word to the wise. And the reason I say that is and maybe you guys know and I don't know, but I have yet to find a way to teach someone that more more money, more whatever it is, isn't going to solve their problem. If they're miserable at $10,000 and they think they're going to be happy at 100,000 or 100 million, sadly, they're not. And so I don't know how to help that person yet. So in terms of that chronology, yes, I think any business, you have to have the uninformed optimism or you would never start. And I think that's why it's important who you surround yourself with, who's your mentors, your buddy at the bar who works the hourly job is not going to understand your new business idea, and you shouldn't be talking to him about it. So I think to some degree, yeah, you have to go through it chronologically, but ultimately it depends on the person. It depends on what has their experience been with inner work, with understanding why they do what they do and not just living the same day for 75 years and calling it a life.
Rodric, can you teach someone to be an entrepreneur, or is it something that is innate and kind of has like, you just have like this visceral feeling, all right, I am just tenacious and I'm going to figure it out, and I'm a little bit of a glutton for punishment? Or can you, as a coach, can you teach that?
I don't think so. That may be a polarizing opinion, but I think when you,
I'm in your camp, but I also have to try to keep an open mind.
Yeah. I think it's one of those, you all are wired like I am, where it's like, I look at, we'll take this camera setup I have in front of me. If I could package that and make it easier for the next guy to just buy the whole setup, but I could make $100 per setup, I could hire somebody to put it together. And you look at everything like that. You get a puppy, you're like, well, I could sell the puppies to me. It's just the way you're wired. Everything is a business opportunity, and it's good and bad to be wired that way. But
I think that's why they invented franchises.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Matt, I got to tell you, I feel bad for our wives. Like, I'll go out to dinner and I start breaking down, well, how's this restaurant making money? I mean, look at the linen service, and you got the hourly wages, then you got the food costs, these are perishables, and there's transportation. This is what I go through. And then I'm like, I look at the menu. The menu's handwritten in the manuscript. It just drives me crazy.
Yeah, and then Luigi goes, now I understand why they're charging $97 for pasta. It's okay.
I'm obsessed. I go a step further. Then I'll be at a coffee shop and I'm like, sir, can you just move your coffee machine here instead of there? Because I think it'll improve your flow. Because if I could save you 4 seconds every cup, that's 4 hours in the course of a year. And he's like, dude, just take your latte and leave.
Right.
Hey,
I love it.
Rodric, we usually don't have business coaches on here because we really don't like them, right?
Neither do I.
You're different, man, because let me explain this to you. Not only have you exited companies, right, but you're donating 100% of everything you make now to a charity that you set up. So let's talk about that a little bit and your philanthropy.
So charity's called Send a Student Leader Abroad, and we're partnered with EF Tours, if you're familiar with EF, but they're a $7 billion company. I think they have 65,000 employees. And that's kind of a cool story in and of itself, in that when we decided to do this, I was that kid that couldn't afford to go on an EF trip when I was in 7th grade. And I distinctly remember my parents arguing about it. My dad didn't want me to go. We don't have the money. Mom knew it would be good for me. It would change my trajectory, right? Ultimately, Mom won, as she often did. And so that's what we want to offer to other kids. So it's typically something that's self-identified, but it's typically somebody that's maybe lower income. They're not gonna be able to afford the trip, but they have that grit, they have that hustle, they have that determination. Their teacher identifies them to apply for this grant. And then we work with them. The trips cost about $4,000 depending on where they go. But we work with them to, do newspapers, sell candy, do, whatever the thing is to try to earn the money, hit up your friends and family. But at the end of the day, if they only raise $5, we pay for them to go on the rest of the trip. And that's where all of this money goes, from the book, from everything that we do. So we don't talk about it a ton, but I'm glad you brought it up, because it's definitely a passion project for me. And, my goal is to send 1 million kids abroad in my lifetime. And the reason for that is because I'm going to ask you this. If everyone, when they graduated high school worldwide, had to go to the other side of the world and volunteer for a year, would we hate anyone ever again?
I don't think so. And I think we'd have more appreciation for the country in the whole.
Yeah. And we were talking about I've been to 61 countries now after this year, and travel is something, it's kind of like that guy that thinks money's going to solve his problems. Travel is something you have to experience. You can read books all day long, but until you're there and you start to hear accents and you start to learn the empathy and where these people come from, it instills that principle that there's no them, there's only us. And without getting on too crazy of a tangent, our history, ours and every other country, is the history of who we're taught to hate at any given point in time. We got to hate the French. We got to hate the Spanish. We got to hate the Mexicans. We got to hate the Russians. We got to hate doesn't matter. It's just all constantly who you're taught to hate. And if you asked anybody in a room, do you know any of these people? They would all say no. And why do we hate them? They're just like us. They just want what's best for their family. They just want to send their kids to school. They just want a better life. They just want to have a nice warm dinner and clean clothes. You know what I mean? We're all at a base rate the same thing. And
well, Superman always needs a Lex Luthor, right? For some reason, psychologically, we always need a nemesis, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think, when you can send a kid who otherwise wouldn't have had that experience, he hopefully we change his trajectory, but the idea is that he takes that conversation that we just talked about back to his community that's otherwise not having that conversation. And he's going to chime in at the dinner table and say, why do we hate these people? That's the goal. That's the ultimate goal.
No, I totally agree. I love to travel too. We just actually, over the summer, we went to Italy and we spent a month there, and my kids were with me too. And they're 9 and they're 11. I didn't leave the country until I was 18 years old, and I could afford to do it myself. So every time we go somewhere, we make a point to bring our kids with us. They've been to like half the number of countries I have. I think I've been to 20. Awesome. They're like 11 right now. So I hope they surpass me and you both.
There you go. I love
it. So Thailand is where you came up with the idea. How long were you there for? And it was just laying on the beach, watching the waves. What were you doing? How'd the idea come about? Thailand
is, there's only 2 countries I've been to, let's say, more than 4 times. Thailand would be one of those. I love Thailand. We were going around the world again. So it was my second trip completely around the world. So Thailand was just one of the stops, but we were there for a month, close to a month. And like you, I'm a Chiang Mai guy. I love Chiang Mai. And then the smaller islands, not necessarily Koh Samui, but like Koh Kood and Koh Mak and some of the tinier ones, but love Thailand. Yeah, lots of Rex for you too. Lots of Rex.
I'm excited. We're going to go. We don't have that much time this year. So if we like it, we'll definitely go back. So talk to me about second time around the world. Those 2 whole trips back to back.
Yeah. I went east once, went west the other.
Okay.
The first time like this, I was, I kind of went Hawaii, Australia, up through Malaysia into Thailand. And then we were supposed to fly through Shanghai, and I went through hell getting a Chinese visa. I have a 10-year Chinese visa, which is like a coveted item these days, you're not getting one anymore. And not that I would go, but COVID broke out and Shanghai was shut down. So I was in Chiang Mai, Thailand, supposed to fly to Shanghai and couldn't, and started going west. So it was kind of happenstance that I went around the world, but I ended up, where did we go? We went to Germany and Denmark and Spain and New York City. And, we were in New York City 8 days before they shut it down. Just crazy that we even made it back. Like we might've been stuck on the other side of the world. But then this last trip was a little bit more by design. We went east, and I travel in a little bit different way that I don't typically have a route of where I'm going. I know the next stop, I know the next week or 2, but I haven't booked a flight or a hotel, or, I know where I'm going. I know roughly when I want to come home, and the rest just happens.
Now I'm envious.
I do more work on the road than I do at home, believe me.
Yeah. So like every time I go, I don't know about you, but if you have that entrepreneurial bug, I'm always looking for other things that are going on in these countries that we don't have here. And I want to bring it back. 100%. I haven't really found anything yet though.
I think of that more with products, and I'll see stuff dirt cheap, and I'm like, I could bring a container of this back, set up a little center section at the mall, and be selling these things to housewives in Charlotte for $40 a piece, and they're 8 cents here. Like, you just start. What's a container cost these days? Yeah, I get it.
Listen, I remember back I grew up in New York. I'm in Florida now, but there was these mall carts, and you bring it up, and they sold sunglasses. They were called New York shades, right?
Yeah.
It was 2 guys that didn't even go to China. They went to Chinatown and they were buying the sunglasses there. Then they took a trip to China, and now in every suburban shopping mall you have, there's a New York shades cart. right?
Yeah.
They're buying them for like $1 and they're selling them for 20 or two for, what is it? I think it's 2 for 40 or 25 a piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
World's
amazing.
sunglasses, man. World's best business plan. I mean, look, we spend a couple $100 on a $2 item. You know?
Well, yeah, it's great. And then you throw the licensing on there and then you get $100 for them, if not more.
Exactly.
So, all right. So we're doing the business coaching. So how many people do you coach? Is it one-on-one? Is it groups? How's the system work?
Very limited. I've got a course that you can buy that's self-paced that goes through a lot of the stuff, but you just don't have the access to me. I'm typically on the 6-week roadmap. I'm working with less than 10 people at a time. And then for those people that are like peaceful warrior or business Buddha, I have something called strategic thought partner, where it's that extra board member that doesn't require health insurance or an office. But I understand your business inside and out. And we do a couple full day intensives, and then I'm at your beck and call for the rest of the year for planning. So I keep it decidedly small. That's the way I like it.
Rodric, I'm still dwelling on what kind of hot rods you have. I just not the last 10 minutes.
Are you a classic car guy?
I'm a little bit of a car aficionado. Yeah.
Okay. So I've had 60 cars, give or take.
So you're competing on trips and cars, whichever trips are winning 61 to 60.
You know, I don't have a car goal, but for trips, I always want to have visited more countries than years of my life. So that's my only goal on that front.
How long do you keep a car before it starts getting boring and dated? I think you fix these up, or do you just admire them?
So I build stuff from scratch. I buy stuff and fix it up and sell it. You know, I've been a car nut since I grew up south of Detroit. So, I mean, it was nothing but cars, you know. And right now I've got a 32 Ford. So I've got a Deuce Coupe. That's my baby. And that's never going anywhere ever. It's tattooed on my wrist. I just built a 50 F1 from scratch, every nut, every bolt, every line, the whole thing start to finish. I did that this year while I was writing the book and building the business. That's my downtime.
What does that mean, you built one from scratch?
A bare frame to drive on the road.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's my downtime. So when I'm in the garage working on something, that's what I'm thinking about the business, but I'm building this it's the creativity of building the other thing that gives me my best ideas on the business side.
I sure hope a chassis doesn't fall on that flip-flop.
I built the entire car in flip-flops. Like, and people think I'm nuts. When I painted the Deuce, I painted it blue. It's like a flat. It's a Hot Rod Flats is the name of the paint, but it's a like dark Smurf blue color and in flip-flops. And I come in and I've got like the white stripes where my flip-flops were, because I was painting. Anyway. Stories for another day, but I'm not lying when I say I'm in flip-flops 100% of the time.
So listen, it didn't start this way. You know, you've had ups and downs and 0 to millions and back, right? You finally got the chance to exit. But during that journey, the ups and down moments, right? What are some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
I'll tell you, I was in a mastermind group last week, and apologies to anybody that might listen to this, but this guy comes in as a speaker and he literally starts with, you know, I had a really easy life. My parents are still together. I made friends super easy. I was like, this is how the whole story went. And I'm like, I don't care anymore. You know, nobody wants to hear that story. You know? So yeah, I mean, we grew up with nothing. I mean, we grew up in a little 1-bath house in Michigan. And I think what drove my entrepreneurial spirit was that if I was going to buy a Nintendo, or I was going to buy shoes, or I was going to buy a bike, I was going to buy it myself. It's kind of like you and your travel. You know, you weren't going anywhere until you were 18 and could afford it yourself. I mean, I'm guessing we have very similar backstories, but it's, you know, we were just a blue collar town, and we didn't grow up with much at all. And, but that drive, when I figured out that I could make money and not have to go work for somebody, I could resell things. I could sell golf balls to the golfers down at the country club. I could walk through the woods for a day and make $15. The light bulb goes off at a really young age that I don't need to go get a job. I just need to find a hustle, you know, for lack of a better word. And I just like to say they just turned into bigger and bigger hustles. But, you know, the lowest point of my life is where, and this goes back to the waves method, and it explains kind of why that was important to me to get out to the world. But I took, the bad word of the day is job. I took a job when I was 24, 25 years old. and it was in new home sales with a Fortune 100 builder and lifelong salesperson. I crushed it. I'm having dinner with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and hanging out with the CEO in Santa Barbara and 401k match, stock match, all the things. And I'm absolutely fucking miserable. And I was anxious and depressed and worse and had suicidal tendencies. And it was very much that this is what I was told was it. And it's not, and if you look at my values, you go through the ways method, you start to build your core values out. Mine are freedom and autonomy and connection with people, and money's on the list. It might be in the top 10, but those other things are what allow me to make money because I'm able to go be me and go out and do what I want to do. Right. And I'm in my glory when I do those things. So in what world did I think that babysitting a model home for 36 hours a week, working every Easter, working every Christmas day, working, 2 weeks of vacation, you heard how much I love to travel. Wow. 2 weeks of vacation. Like why did I think that was ever going to work no matter what they paid me? And that's, if you paid me $1 million a year right now to go sell new homes for 36 hours a week, I wouldn't do it. And that's that lesson, right? I don't think until you experience that, I don't think that you just can't, how many of us out of 8-9 billion people just want more money, but you don't know why.
Rodric, part of your travels, what makes it so interesting is that you're able to travel for extended periods of time. You go someplace for a weekend, you don't really pick up the mores and the traditions and the cultural nuances. Like, what would you say would be some of the more interesting non-American cultural nuances that you've applied to you and your partner's day-to-day lives? Is it like maybe the way you eat or the way you treat others or just acts of kindness? Because Americans, it's stereotypical, but we're isolationist, right? But we're isolationist by geography, right? We have 2 huge oceans and we got a friendly country up top. We got a friendly country down bottom. So we really kind of keep to ourselves. Americans are Americans, right? We're kind of vanilla. But you travel and you introduce all sorts of different ways of living.
Yeah, but I think that goes by state though too, Lou. I know you're still stuck in New York, but it's like when I moved from New York to Florida, my guard was up and my neighbor said hello to me and I'm like, what the fuck do you want? It's just the way we are, it's just, we're always on the move and we never take a step back to be grateful for everything that we have.
Yeah, 100%. Sidebar, but did you watch that new Julia Roberts movie, Leave the World Behind?
Oh, I started to. I never finished it.
Yeah, we might not want to watch it. This is very new.
Hey, I can honestly recognize the tremendous faults in the Communist Republic of New York.
Here. I think to answer your question, it's acts of kindness would be the biggest one. I mean, I think you start to learn. I learned a lot more before there were cell phones, and when you were somewhere and you had a map and you had to ask people how to get places and you couldn't talk into it and it talks to them, which is just a shitty thing to do to people while you're traveling, by the way. But it's, where you had to rely on people from another culture to help you. And so that way, when my dad always told me, don't make fun of people that speak with an accent. You only know one language. It's that idea that, so I'm much more willing to help somebody and I speak fluent Spanish now. I lived in Costa Rica for a while, and certainly people that are here that are trying to make their way, you'll stop and you'll help them. And this is probably a bad opinion too, but you realize very quickly why we're called the rude Americans when you go to other countries and see how we act as a general population. But
yep, I could definitely understand that.
Yeah, our sense of entitlement is not left at home. We'll put
No, but Costa Rica is a perfect example, right? They've got that pura vida mentality of just living life to its fullest.
Yeah, I tell you, one of the biggest lessons I learned in Costa, and I lived about 2 hours north of San Jose. I mean, I was in the country. I was the only white person in town. It was a little town called Las Delicias, and there's a long story about how I ended up there. But you want to talk about learning compassion and learning empathy. When you are the minority by 1 to 10,000, you learn a lot. But it's the biggest thing I learned in Costa was their sense of community and their sense of family, and how many people, the 5 generations, all have lived on the same street, and they don't desire to go anywhere else. It's that it takes a village, right? It's like grandma and great grandma are there helping to raise the kids, and just that the things that can provide fulfillment and happiness that aren't a Lamborghini or a second home, or that the kind of the more simplistic, the simplistic things that make a joyful life.
What's funny about that? I have my own thoughts on that. If we go back, let's say, I don't know, 20, let's go back 60 years here in the United States. And I know in New York, you had more family values, right? The whole household worked together. They pulled in. Even in Brooklyn, Luigi, how many families lived in one brownstone, right? They would buy it together. They pitch in.
My entire extended family, when I grew up, I'm going back to the 70s, my entire extended family lived like in a 5-block radius. Everyone settled in a certain enclave.
Yeah, my family was the same way. There was Sunday dinners, and everybody just pitched in and helped each other out. And the community did too, right? Because you knew everybody. You always helped your neighbors out. I think things started to change when like, I almost want to say it's like when people started graduating college and they didn't want to work in the family business anymore, and everybody just went their separate ways. There was some inflection point. I'm always wondering about how that happened, right? Especially here, or from New York where I am, because we still see it happening in other countries. And I think that's why the community and the culture is so important, and it's still so tight over there when we've lost a lot of that.
There's a whole 10 different directions we could go there. Cheap transportation, the ability to move to the suburbs. You didn't have to live in the city anymore, and then that creates that isolationist mentality, because you're just in your own little neighborhood, off 20 miles outside this. You go into the city, you leave the city, you go back to your house.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting point, but I definitely see that. When we were in Italy, like I said, families and generations and houses, and we were staying in Airbnbs with some of them, and it was amazing.
Where were you at in Italy?
We started in the Amalfi Coast. From there, Naples, Rome. Then Luigi gave me a great place to go to. We rented a villa in Umbria, right? And Umbria is pretty cool because it's like on the outskirts of Tuscany, and there was like no tourists there, so it was really cool. Then we went to Florence, Venice. We did Rome also. Went over to Pisa, and then we went to Greece for a week. From there,
I was just there, not too far from where you were.
Okay.
We were. It's called Barberino, Tavernello de Barberino, but it was right outside of Tuscany. Same thing. It's like 15 of us or 16 of us went, had a 10-bedroom villa, and little tiny town, going to get coffee in the morning. And
that was the best part of the trip.
Glorious. Oh yeah. 100%.
We were tired of going out to eat. We went shopping, we cooked. It was awesome speaking to people and just being involved and ingrained in the culture. Right. One thing I will say about Costa Rica though, is I will never drive in that place ever again.
I had a car. I actually just sold my car. I bought a brand new car when I was down there, and then the girl I was with, we broke up. The car just stayed down there in San Jose. I had like 3,000K on it.
Paved roads,
and it was called a Chang'an. It was a Chinese car. You can't buy them here. I would have brought it here, but they're not legal in the States because of safety. And anyway, long story short, I would tell people that would come to visit, I'd say, like, if you're renting a car, get the full insurance. And they, oh no, it's fine. I'm like, no, you do not understand what. There are 8-foot ditches there, especially when you leave San Jose. You go, but there's no street lights, there's no signs, there's no, like, you don't know what you're getting yourself in for.
Yeah, it was interesting. So Rodric, we want to be respectful of your time. We really appreciate you being here. So can you tell everybody where they can actually find you, your courses, and they can reach out to you?
Yeah. $1,000,000flipflops.com. If you want to take the quiz, it's /quiz. At $1 Million Flip-Flops on every channel. I'm super easy to find.
Awesome. So Rodric, last question before I let you run. So you live by this quote, right? I want to know what this quote is. Can you tell the audience and what it really means to you?
I'm going to presume it's the cost of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it.
Yes.
All right. It's also tattooed on my arm. So I do live by that quote. To me, that means it used to mean that, if I'm going to go buy something and I buy a house, it's going to cost me $1,500 a month. How much life does that $1,500 cost me? It costs me 40 hours of life. It costs me 60 hours of life. And I think when you look at things from that perspective, and now it obviously looks different, at this stage of the game, but the concept remains the same. You're never trading dollars. Ultimately, you're trading time. And that's the only thing we don't get back.
That's the first time I heard that, and I love it. Rodric, thank you so much. Everybody, that's a wrap of the Liquid Lunch Project. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Liquid Lunch Project.